Hello, hello, hello. Yeah, so now the sound system is ready now. Yes, now it's audible. And I'm working with the absolutely latest laptop with the oldest problem. The design is a smiley from the whole group, whoever is watching. Do we wait for the guys to join, right? Yeah, we will do. Not an issue. I'm saying, okay, so we'll begin with the Shanti Mantra. We need the blessings of all the natural elements as well as power, electricity, internet connection. In addition to Adi Bhuta, Adi Deva, and Adhyatmika, we will begin with the Shanti Mantra. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye सच्चित् सुखस्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे हरि ओम. Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, the fourth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, marks a transition from a philosophical mode to a mode of a confession coming from the highest avatara, Sri Krishna. The confession here is that he introduces himself as the force, the supreme force, who has been the knower of the origin of knowledge, and he is able to communicate that knowledge right from Vivaswan, who happens to be the ancient, the foremost of the created personalities, and from there down till now, the same knowledge is being transferred. But as a matter of fact, whenever knowledge is transferred, it is mixed with a lot of personal views, a lot of lokacharas. Thereby, the original intent of the message often gets garbled, often gets mutilated, and the message, by and large, loses the purpose. So Sri Krishna, he vouchsafes unto the humanity, it's a promise, a kind of a promise, that whenever such a thing happens and the knowledge is not much usable, he comes back to the, so to say, to this planet as an avatara, and he transmits the knowledge in its pristine purity, retaining the pristine purity. So that is possible only, not only that you should know the knowledge, but you should also uh, be a person, a force which identifies the global scheme of degradation. That it's time, the right time for the message to be rejuvenated, to be given in its again pure form. So this is possible only for a force which is a witness of the three times, the past, present, and the future. Our Shastras say that even though it is humanly unthinkable to be a witness of the three times, the spiritual scriptures, they say that it is possible for the Ishvara, the Supreme God, that He is the eternal witness of the changing times. So it becomes a kind of a prerogative of Him, of that Ishvara, if we may use that personalized terminology, that it becomes His prerogative to come back to the creation and make amends, for the simple reason that this is a creation which is a handiwork of His own force. Therefore, it becomes His own responsibility to see to that the message is rectified and the due course of action is taken. Imam Vivasvate Yogam and so on. So as we move ahead, we also find the second beautiful message coming from the Jnana Karma Sanyasa Yoga, which is the fourth chapter, is that the concept of renunciation, which has been confined only to a particular group of so-called the mendicants or the vairagis, those people who have given up the regular course of the normal pursuit of worldly life. So he takes that particular idea of renunciation and draws up a larger picture, saying that if in spirit, if the renunciation can be retained, then a person can be serving in any station of life and can be in any walk of life. So he sort of democratizes the concept of renunciation and says Sri Krishna brings in this concept of sacrifice, yajna, which as a phenomenon, as a practical application, as a code of conduct, and to some extent doctrinated. To some extent, because he says that it is coming from the very practice of the Lord Brahma. Brahma himself, the creator God, which the Puranas keep talking of, Sri Krishna even points to Brahma and says that even he goes about the creation with the principle of yajna. So and yajna is the basis for, is a root idea for renunciation. Without yajna, we cannot practice renunciation. Renunciation is actually kind of a giving up. Essentially, it is tyaga, nyasa, sannyasa, which is renunciation. Nyasa means throwing. As dhatu is to throw, and nyasa is also throwing. Kshepanam, they say. And throwing away what? What do you throw? You throw away the sense of doership, the sense of ownership, the sense of right over the created objects and the created beings. So that giving up the sense of ownership and sense of, but nevertheless being yoked in the action. That is the beauty of the karma yoga. That's where the democratization happens. The traditional concept of renunciation tells that a person will have to extract himself from the worldly setup and resort to an isolated lifestyle, so that there is not much of a pressure, that he doesn't come under the responsibility and duty consciousness, because that happens when you're living in the society. We cannot remain away from the callings of the society. We must be participating in the callings of the society. That's what the social life is all about. So if the neighborhood is having a problem, it becomes my bounden duty to go and be of support to them. Naturally, what happens is that, so the complete giving up is not possible in the traditional sense of renunciation, tyaga, which Sri Krishna comes and does a course correction. It's a beautiful idea which comes in the fourth chapter through the concept of yajna. Of course, yajna is an idea which is dealt at large in other scriptures. This is what is called Panchamaha Yajna, Nri Yajna, Bhuta Yajna, and so on, which we have dealt in detail in the earlier classes. So the yajna, which is an action done without expecting any sense of return. Well, you are not rejecting the returns, but you don't expect the return to come back to you. So it's like the wind has its role of blowing. When the wind blows, it does its job. When the sun shines, it does its jobs. It doesn't expect any kind of acknowledgement or any kind of return for the job it does. And this is the core sense of yajna, that a man takes the ahuti, the ghee, and then puts it in the fire. Once it puts into the fire consumes the ghee. What does he get out of it? And he uses some holy names. So the oblation goes to the gods, and it is done to please the gods. That's it. So the yajna stops there. It's now up to the gods in the traditional sense of yajna. It's up to the gods now to do their part of the work, so to say, in fulfilling the purpose of the prayer, the purpose of this entire yajna, for which the guy is now engaging in, and so on. So that's when we come to this shloka, Brahmarpanam Brahma Havihi, Brahmagno Brahmana Hutam, Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhina. That is the ultimate sense of yajna is communicated in this 21st verse, where Brahman becomes the central role and the theme of the yajna. It is the concept of Brahman being everywhere. He is the doer and he is the benefactor. He is the product itself and he is the process itself. So now, as an individual, I lose myself in the collective consciousness of Brahman. It's a very, very exalted idea put up at the very middle of the chapter, 21st verse. Near about 40 plus verses are there. Brahmarpanam comes at the very middle of the verse. And then Sri Krishna propounds a series of ideas by which we can practice yajna on a day-to-day basis. That's the third contribution of the fourth chapter. That is, can we transmute our regular activity into yajna? So he says, Daivameva pare yajnam yoginaha paryupasate brahmagnava pare yajnam naivopajuhvati, and so on. Apare niyata haraha. So the worship of the God is yajna, the worship of the mains is yajna. Then what about you people undergoing tapasya, some kind of practices of continence? Even they are yajnas, because ours is to abide and the not to the results thereon. That idea is intrinsic in the performance of the yajna. So thereby we come to the 31st verse that says, just a minute, yajnashishta mritabhujo yanti brahma sanatanam nayam lokostya yajnasya kuthonyaha kurusattama. This is the 31st verse. It says that now when a yajna is done, finally one ahuti will be given, and the whatever is left over after the yajna, so that yajna, it has to be partaken with the community. So what does it mean? So every action will entail some result. That's obvious. And now the result may not, when we do sanyasa or a yajna, we don't expect the entire results to come to us. It's not that we don't expect result at all, then nobody will do. So yajnas are done certainly for results, but we cannot expect the entire result of the yajna to come to us, because we, being the social fabric, there are many contributors to this yajna, and the results, in a very mystical manner, gets apportioned to the entire community which is engaging in the collective process of evolution called yajna. Therefore, whatever results comes to the performer of the yajna, even from that result, he says yajna shishta. It's called the remains of the sacrifice, and that also the sacrificer should not exercise a total ownership of that. So, if you will convert that into the model parlance, say for instance, a person goes to the company and then say he gets his earnings, and his earnings is out of the effort, the labor, the intelligence, the involvement, the association, the identification, the contribution, It's an acknowledgement of all that. The compensation comes to him at the end of the month, 5 lakh rupees, 3 lakh rupees, whatever. So he takes that compensation. It's entirely it belongs to him, huh? Right? Now, of late, we have the TDS, the taxes deducted at source. Of course, he can claim it at the end, and so on and so forth. There are some ways to get back the money if it's confines to a limit. But nevertheless, there is a bit of amount of his earnings he gives to the back to the society by force. The government takes it from him. It's by force. It's by nature. It's by the very design of the social polity that I will have to give back some of my earnings to the society. Now, is this yajna? No, it is not. It is because of my very the benefit which the government is giving back to me through various kinds of services. So I am. It's not that I am entirely giving that money in sacrifice. So whatever work I have done, it's a sacrifice, and the result is enjoyed by many. Meaning to say that my money is used, money of several people are used, and some common facilities are made. It's for the collective good. So all the people who are in the society, they are contributing their a little might and helping their own survival in a much better manner. Correct? So this will not amount to a sacrifice. This will not amount. So whatever money that's left, that's not Yajna Shesha also. The Yajna Shesha will now mean after paying the tax, whatever money is left with him, that is Yajna Shesha. He says, the scripture now says that even from this money, a person will have to engage in a bit of philanthropy and charity. A person should not claim total ownership of this leftover also. In fact, some of our Grihya Sutras and then Dharma Shastras, they even say that up to the 10% of the individual's earnings, whatever is with him at the end of the month or beginning of the month, whatever is with him, 10% of which have to be given in philanthropy. This is in addition to the tax rules. So that is mandated in our Dharma Shastras because this taxation is not something new. We had it from even during the king's times. We had this. So partaking of this nectar leftover sacrifice is the kind of philanthropy now. The fidelity giving and all these things that are happening nowadays is following this particular rule, and it what it does is this has to be done. Now, what happens if the guy doesn't do this yajna? What he does not engage in this kinds of personal philanthropy? He can say that it's my money. Okay, I have the total. Yeah, you are justified. It's yours. But then it stops your path for further evolution. He says, Na ayam lokaha. Ayagyasya. A person who does not perform this yajna, meaning to say, who doesn't share his own personal earnings with others in whatever way possible. If he doesn't do that, Krishna says in this particular verse that this loka does not belong to him. Meaning to say, he will not get the best of the returns that is in the design, the scheme of the Brahma's creation. Meaning to say that this will not lead to the evolution of the human mind. He will get stagnated. Now, I am lokaha means he will. This loka. Why is it that the people are born? First of all, we are born in this place only to undergo the ladder of the path of evolution, not to get stagnated as just a human being. Because human being, no, it is not a particular. We may biologically be termed as a species, but psychologically and spiritually a human being has an entire gamut of existence, right from beasthood to divinehood. The entire gamut is covered by so-called the human existence, not by having just the features of the Homo sapiens, which is biologically true, of course. So as a result, we see that a person will have to evolve from the beasthood in the human frame to the divinehood in the very same human frame. So how is that evolution possible? Krishna says it is possible. And how is it possible? Only if a person will have a very holistic approach in the life that he has got, which is a very, very rare opportunity because among the millions of living species, we somehow, mystically, magically, we have got this human being. What even in fact, some great philosophers have asked, what if it would be that I were to be born as a butterfly? How butterfly is different from a human being? What right the butterfly does not have, which the man has, by the virtue of being a life in the planet? As a life in the planet, democracy says everyone has the right for existence. True. That's the reason why we have this ecological environmental balance, which is being now paid a lot of attention in order to have this ecosystem preserved. Fantastic. So the life is now respected. All the live, but among all these respected lives, we silently adore and we silently appreciate the idea that we have somehow been adorning this frame of a human being. So the life of a human being is much worshipped. Needless to say that we wield the highest power and being the top of the food chain. So naturally, what has made this human being, this life in a very larger perspective, so so good about me to be born as a human being? Why is it that this me and I is not born as a butterfly? Maybe I am there. I'm not feeling it. So that's why in Veda, in Vivek Chudamani, the very first says, Jantu Nam, among all the living beings, millions of life species are there. Narajanma Durlabam, to be born as a human being is extremely difficult. And having got that, it's a travesty and a pity that it has to be given away in the hands of the nature. The nature makes a lot of beastly existence out of us, and it denies the divine propensities. And it is this particular training of the mind that is required in order to unfold the divine personality and the divine uh, the being within us. And it is the mind which, when trained, can actually experience this divinehood in the very frame of the human existence. In fact, this particular sense of freedom that we enjoy, that we can be anything between a beast and and a divine being, because of this freedom, our scripture says it extols the status of a human being born as a human being. It says even the gods are jealous of the human beings, because gods don't have they don't have the freedom. They are fixed to their mortal frame, and they have to function exactly the way they are programmed. But the human being is the one who has the total freedom. And having got this freedom, it's only wise that we invest this freedom in a right manner and climb this ladder of evolution and and emancipate ourselves and evolve ourselves from being an ordinary person to a divine personality. That's why it says, Na ayam lokaha. A person doesn't even get the riches of this world if a person does not practice yajna. If that be the case, kutaha anyaha, how can he aspire for some better lokas, which the shastras speak about? Almost all shastras speak about heavens. What is the point in talking about entering into other lokas and all? Even the person doesn't even get the deserving things in this loka. It's a very beautiful idea. It actually brings in a lot of a social feeling in our own fabric of society. Evam Bahuvida, the 32 says that the various kinds of sacrifices, they lie spread at the mouth of the Vedas. So all these sacrifices are not pronounced by a mere whimsical mind. The Vedas give their sanction. They give the testimony for the veracity of all these practices. And then know them all to be born out of action. All the yajnas that we perform, all these the doctrines that we abide by. I'm saying doctrine in the sense that we don't have any other means to verify this particular body of knowledge. It's not that it's hard coded, but it's that we don't have any other way to know. And the moment we practice, we will have a personal appeal for all this knowledge, and then it becomes the knowledge. We get to own the knowledge. So thereafter, it doesn't become a doctrine. But to a beginner, it appears to be a doctrine. So once he knows that, Krishna says this knowledge leads to liberation. Karmajan viditan sarvan evan jnatva. Vimokshase. So vimokshase means what? He gets liberated. Liberated from what? What is the sense of liberation which Sri Krishna is talking about? Moksha is an idea which is the Purushartha. We have four Purusharthas, that is Dharma, Artha, Kama, and the fourth one is Moksha. Typically, Dharma, Artha, Kama help us to achieve better life practices while we are alive, while we are in these mortal frames. But moksha always has been an idea. Traditionally, it is projected that after death, you are liberated. That is the traditional idea. But Sri Krishna brings in this idea that you can be liberated even when you are alive. So, this is a wonderful contribution of the Gita from the fourth chapter. He says, by the very knowledge that you get out of it liberates you. So, what is the nature of this liberation? It's You are liberated from what is called as a samsara, the samsara of birth and death. And we have already seen in the earlier classes that the samsara is actually the cycle, and the cycle can be abstracted in the highest uh, in a lot more higher level. It can be abstracted into avidya, kama, and karma. So it is avidya karma cycle is the one which is bringing in other vicious cycles. All the vicious cycles are contained within this global cycle called avidya kama karma. So from avidya, we get a desire because we don't know about ourselves. We try to fulfill by entertaining some desires, and we engage in actions. All our initiatives, all our indulgence are meant to fulfill these desires, and that further strengthens our ajnana, avidya. So avidya kama karma, that's a global cycle, and all other cycles are contained within this. Sub-cycles we may call it as. And the birth and death is also contained within this. So he says the samsara here actually means this global cycle of avidya kama karma. So that cycle gets cut. When that cycle gets cut, that is moksha. So that means, friends, this is a wonderful idea which we can appreciate from the coming from the Gita, that in every little action that we engage in, we are caught up in this cycle. It's not that the cycle is happening only once. A cycle is something which repeats itself, correct? And this repetition is, what is the time span of this repetition? Typically, people say birth and death. See, birth and death is a very long cycle of, say, 100 years, which is what Vedas say. Shato vai ayam purushaha. So, 100 years is too long for us to appreciate the sense of a cycle. Krishna Bhagavan, by saying is that evang yatva vimokshase, by saying that particular thing, he is making us draw our attention to this idea of avidya kama karma cycle happening every minute, every moment. So long as the idea, we don't have the clear idea about ourselves, we are going to aspire for things which are alien to ourself, to our real self. And that is going to make us engage in karma, and karma will lead to karma bija, samskaras. And samskara is going to serve the avidya. So every thought now gets locked up in this cycle. What is mind? Mind is nothing but a series of thoughts. If thinking stops, there is no way we can testify whether mind exists or not. Even so is the case in our deep sleep. We don't even know what exists. Fortunately, we come back alive in the morning and we are able to appreciate the deep snoring. But while we are actually doing that, we are not aware. So thoughts are the ones which make us feel, make the sense of life out of us. So in every thought, the cycle is involved. So every thread which is getting into a cycle is contributed by every thought. So we have to do a course correction at the thought level. That is jnanam. Thought is the one which is giving us knowledge. So at the knowledge, if we do the course correction, we find that the person, an individual, a sadhaka, a striving soul, he will be able to release himself from the clutches of the cycle. And he will not be compelled to go around the cycle for eternity. Evam yatva vimokshase. Shreyan dravya. Then, as yajna has been the central theme of about 7 shlokas in the immediate. Um, so far, what we have seen, this shloka 33 brings in a very wonderful idea. Shreyan Dravyam. See, Dravya Yajna is also talked about in the earlier yajnas. That is giving away gifts. That's what, a person, guy is engaging in philanthropy, charity in the physical form. That is what is called Dravya Yajna. Dravya means materials, gifting in kind. Of course, cash is included. Shreyan Dravya Mayat Yajnat Jnana Yajnaha Parantapa. So the knowledge is considered as a sacrifice, and that sacrifice is considered as a greater sacrifice than sacrificing materials. The sacrifice of jnana, sacrifice which leads to jnana, that is much superior than the sacrifice which involves materials. So, and he says, Sarvam karma kilam partha jnane pari samapyate. It's a very beautiful verse, and this verse has got a lot of philosophical connotation. Uh, Sarvam karma akilam karma, all kinds of actions, samapyate, comes to an end. It comes to a culmination. What culmination? When jnane, when a person gets the knowledge. Knowledge of what? Knowledge of the self, knowledge of the true meaning of sacrifice. The true meaning of sacrifice, if he comes to know that jnanagni dagda karmani, jnanagni sarva karmani dagda juhvati jnana deepite. Jnana, that jnana deepa. Yeah, all the thoughts that are arising in the mind are actually oblations given into this jnana deepa, which is resulting in knowledge. So the knowledge is about the equanimity in vision. I see a particular thing. Now I can recognize the material aspect of that thing. I can recognize the utility aspect of that thing. I can recognize the ownership aspect of that thing. I can recognize the existence aspect of the thing. That is the Sat property of Sat Chit Ananda. The Sat property of that is Brahman. So that means what? Given everything, every thought that comes to the mind, it is basically the sense offerings into the mind. And the mind, what does it make out of it? It is makes a sense of ownership. It makes a sense of utility. It makes a sense of, all the things that are material and physical. But if only it can make sense of the Sat property of the Sachidananda, that is Jnana. That's the Jnana Deepa. That is the Jnana Deepa. So if it is able to do that, then what happens? In that sense of, in the knowledge of the existential sense of the objects, that means what? Every object will be consumed into this particular knowledge. No perception will be exempted or accepted from this, because all of them have this common factor called Sachidananda. So if only our brain and mind is fine tuned to appreciate, accept, be convinced about the Sachidananda in everything. That means what? The fire, the ahuti, the ghee of a particular sense object, namely an apple. Apple has its color, has its purpose, has its order, has its all physical properties. So this apple of knowledge is apple of a thing is now consumed in the fire of knowledge, in the sense that it identifies apple not with its respective properties, but it identifies apple as Sachidananda, as Brahman. That is the Jnana Deepa. So when this Jnanam, Jnane Parisamapyate, Jnane Parisama, see if this Jnana comes up, then what happens? The karma, Krishna says, comes to a stop. Karma comes to a stop means what? Does it mean that he becomes a stone? He will not eat, he will not walk, he will simply sit and then keep, a vacant look at the world, because he is not able to differentiate between the apple and the mango. Because apple also is Brahman, mango also is Brahman, so he will not be able to neither eat it, nor keep it, nor play with it. So what does he become? What does it make out of him? It makes him out of an inert object, like just like another apple in mango. No, that is not the sense that is coming out of this. Sarvam karma akilam. Here, what it means that avidya kama karma, he is coming out of that cycle. That is the karma, his involvement and the indulgence with this world, so to say, does not lead him to further actions. It does not put karma bija, karma vasana, or those seeds for the future action is not there. So every thought that crosses his mind is now a kind of an exhausting thought. It exhausts all the contained propensities already within the human constitution, the chitta. He keeps exhausting them and never feeds back into the system. It's a very, very mystical thing which our Shastras talk about. It has its basis, in Yoga Shastra because it talks about Karma Shayas and Jnana Shayas, Jnana Samskaras and Karma Samskaras. Yoga Shastra talks about in very great detail, and it even devises some of the meditative practices as of how these vasanas can be tackled. So bringing all the body of knowledge, all the terminology, all the connotations into the Vedanta Shastra, which Gita is talking about, he says that so karma will henceforth not create any karma bija. So one karma leading to another karma, that is cut. That means what? Your avidya is not going to be fed again. So at the thought level, we have cut the cycle. What happens therefore? So the karma that you have done is no karma at all. Already Krishna has said in the beginning, what is karma and what is not karma has to be understood properly. Karmanya karmayah pashyet. So the sorry, um, कर्मणो अपि बोद्धव्यम बोद्धव्यम च विकर्मणः अकर्मणश्च बोद्धव्यम. Karma and akarma, vikarma is chhod do. It's a of course a thing to be considered, but the main confusion is between karma and akarma. What when does a karma becomes a karma, so to say? It becomes karma only if it creates a karma bija, when it creates the cause, a reason, a purpose for a future action, a compulsion for a future action. More than a purpose, actually it creates a compulsion for a future action. That's why the viciousness is set in the cycle. But when you commit an action where it doesn't compel to you another action, then this is not considered as action according to Sri Krishna. That is akarma. So karma sarvam karma ke jnane parisamapyate means every karma will be now transmuted into akarma. Therefore, what happens? He will not acquire any karma bija, and whatever karma happens, it exhausts the bija which has already got into his system, and over just a period of time, he will find that he is completely liberated. Jnane parisamapyate. It's a beautiful idea. 33. So, tadviddi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninaha tattvadarshinaha. Certainly, this kind of philosophy, when it is given one after another, it's not for the consumption of a very unlettered mind. Unlettered, not in the sense of uh, not able to read books, unlettered in the sense of uninitiated into these spiritual practices, into this philosophical thinking. It's not possible, correct? It requires some kind of guru shishya relationship, but nevertheless, a person, if he is already familiar with these ideas, he can set forth himself into the practice, the very footing. Well, a PhD student may require a little pointers from the guide. He does not require a guide to sit with him and read through a book and all. That's not required. So that is already done in his earlier ages, 10th standard, 11th standard, and so on, where the teacher is available at his beck and call. And yeah, the system provides that these days. And he is getting educated. So likewise, Sri Krishna says that if these concepts are not easy to understand, nothing to worry about. In order to know this, try to find out some teacher, go to him with all reverence, engage in some kind of a personal service to that master because he deserves that, and personal service, and then put forth a question about all these mystical things, all these very inscrutable things, all these subtle concepts, and then the master, uh, out of his love and compassion for such students, looking at their eagerness or their curiosity and their sincerity, he will unveil the truths that are hidden in this inscrutable language. He makes it a very easy commodity for consumption. So he says, Jnaninaha Tattvadarshinaha te upadekshanti. No, sometimes, the people, when they read the shloka, they take a common misunderstanding. He says, Gita is therefore not practical. Why? Because we don't find a teacher of this stature who can explain us. While we may admit that we are ignorant about these spiritual matters and the subtle concepts, and we may also possibly be convinced that, yeah, we really want to know about it, we really want to practice some of this, if such a desire comes. I mean, very instantly we start looking for people, but we don't get them. We don't get them immediately. It requires a good amount of striving, apparently, it seems to be, in this modern world. There are too many distractions and diversions, and even there are too many less qualified people. See, upadekshanti te jnanam. Who can give that jnana? Only who has acquired that jnana. But how to find that person? They say Gita therefore is impractical, because we cannot find such persons at our to serve our purpose, at our beck and call, so to say. Internet search does not give us the Google map location of such persons. But being so the case, the the message therefore has got distanced from the modern times. I completely I completely disagree with this opinion. What Sri Krishna says here is, he does not say that it is mandatory for you to look for a teacher. He says that if you get a teacher, know that you have got a jackpot. So Sri Krishna is bringing on a kind of a, a quickening impulse for a person to acquire this knowledge. He says that if you happen to see a person, tadvidhi pranipa pariprashnena sevaya tattvadarshinaha, if you happen to meet them, if you don't happen to meet them, it does not mean that this knowledge is denied for the practitioner. It's just that he will have to apply himself. He has to study. He has to study and go through the entire process of getting trained from the lesser ideas to the greater ideas. The training is necessary, but the training, there's a huge gulf between an untrained and a trained person. It takes a time for it but when you meet a tattvadarshi, a person who knows the truth, he just quickens the process, because by a little bit of service to him and maintaining some sincerity and curiosity, in fact you will be surprised to see that this idea is echoing what is already said in the Upanishads. You see in Prashnopanishad and Mandukya Upanishad that the disciples, they were all, those disciples are all of very regal character and of very high pedigree. They all are either sons of great kings or in the lineage of some rishis. These people, they approach this Tattvadarshi, as Sri Krishna puts it here. They approach the Tattvadarshi and then says that, Master, they with all eagerness and then curiosity, sincerity, and then with a lot of reverence and devotion also for that matter, they come and ask this question. So, can you please instruct us in this inscrutable knowledge of Brahman? Because it is from you we can get in its pristine format, unadulterated format. You know what the master told these eager students? He said, go back to your place. You live with this question for an year or so and practice austerities, all kinds of austerities. No compromise on that. Practice austerities and come back after a year if you still have a doubt. And he says, he doesn't even say that I will give you the answer. He says, once you come back and put the question, if I know the answer, I will give you. So that means he upfront didn't even listen to these guys. The very At the very instant of inviting them in their ashrama, the master entreats them not with a welcoming attitude, but with an attitude of sending them away. He says that whatever be they said that we have some questions. They didn't even tell what the questions are. He says that go back, perform some austerities for quite a long period of time, 1 year, 5 year, and so on, and then come back if you still have that question. So that means, am I serious whether the answer to this question is really important to me or not? Quite a few times, what happens, we have a lot of passing thoughts. We are whimsical about our own thought processes. This moment we have a question, next moment we are engaging in something else. Everything is a tea party for us. So in the case of a tea party world, now, we cannot entertain serious questions. And we cannot yoke ourselves to the practice of getting the answers to those questions. A PhD is not for chicken hearted. 7 years, 6 years, he should be ready to spend that much amount of time to acquire the degree. So for that intense research, and here he is going to do the highest research. So the master, he divined all these things even before they put forth the question. He says that if you still have interest in knowing the question, come after 1 year. You see, that reverence is necessary. While and the deeper sense of purpose is necessary when we are seeking the ultimate truth. So here he says, when you meet this Tattvadarshi, you will have to express that eagerness. If the master says, you'll have to jump from the cliff, we should be ready to do that. Should be ready to do that on the lighter vein, of course. So because the master has come here to salvage us, and he is going to make this learning a lot quicker for us. The gulf is bridged, at a matter. It's just a matter of tries, because he is already has the knowledge. I already have the apple with me, and they can transact the apple. Swami Vivekananda says this, that religion is like a commodity which can be transacted. We can give and take religion, and it's a beautiful idea. When he talks about Sri Ramakrishna, when Sri Ramakrishna met Narendranath for the first time, and Narendranath entreats, he approaches Sri Ramakrishna with the same question: have you seen God? So Sri Ramakrishna says, yes, I have seen, without winking, without any second thought. He says that, yes, I have seen. Not only that, I see more clearly than what I see in you. And then third statement, he says, I can make you also see. That making you also see is what is called giving the religion. And the Tattvadarshi like Sri Ramakrishna can do that. And that's what Vivekananda did. Pariprashnena Sevaya. They all served the master. The 16 disciples, they served Sri Ramakrishna, the master. And they all became Brahmagyanis. And they were all sincere. They stood ground on the purpose for which they set forth the life journey, truth seeking. A PhD scholar cannot have a wavering mind. He cannot have a plan B. He should have only plan A. That he has to crack the problem, he will have to get the PhD degree. So that's that kind of dedication and devotion should be there for the objective that he has set forth himself. And if the objective is sacred by its own merit and right, it's all the more great. If it is otherwise, we should have a lot of passion, in the sense of a lot of love and devotion for the object that we adore. So these Tattvadarshi are able to transfer this knowledge to the eager aspirant. So here it says this. So the message of this particular shloka does not uh, make it as a kind of an imperative that you should seek a Tattvadarshi, which is a common mistake which other authors do. In fact, recently I read one paper, a research paper from an university, which mentioned this as one of the, there is a modern trend to do what is called the ABCD analysis and the SWOT analysis and so on. So in the ABCD analysis, they said C for challenges. Okay, so this is one of the challenge they put, that how to find how to find a Tattvadarshi. Well, am I really a true aspirant for this knowledge? That is a big question I have to ask myself. Can I live with a particular thought following all austere practices for 1 year? Can I do that for myself? That question will never be asked. But then the question will be asked about the availability of the Tattvadarshi. Anyway, doesn't matter. But it's Sri Krishna says that this is not imperative. If you get one, it makes your life much easier. Yajñātvā na punarmoham evam yasyasi pandava yena bhutani asheshena drakshasi atman yatho maya mayi. This is the 35th verse of the 4th chapter. He says that yajñātvā, knowing the knowledge, that upadishtam jnanam, that is, that knowledge which is given by the master, also attained by your own practice of yajna, you will not come under the delusion again. Meaning to say, avidya kama karma cycle, you will not be caught again. Because every thought is now just like, in a traffic police. In a traffic, the traffic police and traffic inspector, what he does is, he knows when to stop a vehicle and when to allow a vehicle and which way to allow the vehicle. He knows all of that dynamics, and he orchestrates the entire opera, so to say, the ballet dancing of the traffic. He controls that. So likewise, if only we can install the sentry, the traffic police, and we're able to stop a thought, we are able to divert a thought, or we are able to allow the thought. If we can do at thought level, that means no thought goes into the system uninspected. Yajna concept is actually bringing this particular idea. All this, there are more than 20 different formats of yajna which Krishna has talked about. All these are of very, very common, natural, what you call life practices. They all been transmuted to yajna. So this is giving us a wonderful opportunity to examine every thought and gain intense control on the thought. So because behind every thought lies both our cause of bondage as well as the cause of release from the bondage. We cannot allow this thought to go away. Of course, these practices take time, even for that matter. Just because I am saying this doesn't mean that I have been able to filter all the thoughts, but it's just that we gain more and more self control on it, and we gain a lot of dominion status over this field of mind. As much as you conquer, that much amount of freedom you get. Freedom is not a Boolean factor here. Freedom is a gradation. So, more control we have over the mental thoughts, larger sovereignty we get over the mental domain. We'll get the dominion status. That's what is brought out in this. So he says that the moment we get a dominion status over certain regions of the mind, we become master of that. Suppose somebody says, I have controlled smoking, for instance. The guy undergoes some rehabilitation procedures, and then he is educated well, and then he gets to know, and he also had a bit of his own suffering, and then the suffering is really painful and regret worthy, so to say. So what he does is he says that henceforth I shall not smoke. So that smoking domain has been completely controlled in him, and then he doesn't go back to smoking. There are several who have done that, who have achieved it, and who have relieved themselves from this kind of bondage of smoking. Now, if you tempt again these guys into smoking, they will only laugh at you. He says that, bacha, you are yet to evolve. I have seen the entire gamut of it. What is at the beginning and where it leads you, I can further not be misled to believing any good offerings of this cigarette. So he gives up the ways once and for all. Na punaha moham. He will never be deluded by that cigarette call of the nature in the form of cigarette again. Now imagine if each one of these habits we are able to examine and categorically and philosophically and with conviction able to acquire a dominion status. We have a complete control over that. That's what the traffic inspector is doing. He doesn't get attracted to a Rolls Royce that is coming. Hey, this Rolls Royce car is fantastic. Huh? Why should it stop in the signal? Let us allow this Rolls Royce to go while some other route the vehicles are moving, he permits a Rolls Royce to enter just because he got attracted to Rolls Royce. What it is going to do? It's going to create a traffic jam within his constitution. On the other hand, so the orchestra gets disturbed. The ballet dancing is becomes abruptly chaotic. So he says, "Na punaha moham." When once you get perfected, once you get this knowledge, once this knowledge comes to us about the real purpose of yajna and the power lodged behind this yajna, once he comes to know, na punaha moham. This is a great, uh, sense of solace for us. Somebody asked this question to me long time back. He asked, Swamiji, we all tell that getting jnana is good. Okay, what is the guarantee that you will not forget the jnana that you have got? As if, forgetting Newton's principle and Einstein's theory of relativity and forgetting gravity and gravity equations and then forgetting IT technology. Of course, we do forget all these things. So, likewise, we can forget the knowledge of the Brahman also. So, what is the guarantee that we won't forget? This is what he says. Yajnatva na punaha moham avapsyasi. That supreme knowledge, once you get, the knowledge which is confirmed by the yajna practices, once you get that, you will never get back the, into this vicious cycle. So it's a great kind of a solace for us that the knowledge, once you've got it forever. Yena bhutani asheshena drakshasi atmanyato maya. And this particular knowledge will make all the beings see the highest self within their own self. So the highest knowledge is also vouchsafed onto these practitioners who have perfected this practice. Apichedasi papebhyah sarvebhyah papakrittamah sarvam jnanaplavenaiva vrijinam santarishyasi. Vrijinam, again the same idea. Vrijinam means here sin. Again, what is sin? In fact, there is no concept of sin in our Eastern thought. Papa and Punya, here Papa is not sin because sin actually has got a biblical connotation. I've already touched this point a long time back. So the biblical connotation of eternal condemnation is there when you talk about sin. But in the Eastern thought, in Vedanta, there is no sin. Vedanta does not recognize sin. Swami Vivekananda says. But then what is this Vrijina? This Vrijina is nothing but, again, karma bija. When you do a karma with a polluted sense of idea of identification as well as ownership, and then we make mistakes in the work because of all that. Now, this is going to create a karma bija. This karma bija is a sin in the Vedantic sense of the term. What it is going, this particular thing is going to create future action. So, what does sin do? Eastern philosophy says sins will give you future births according to what you did, in proportion to the measure of the consequences. Even so, will be the form of life one man gets. What is the authority? The scriptural authority comes from Yoga Shastra also. And Bhagavad Gita also says that in the 8th chapter. We'll have time to go to there. We'll have time to go to that. Yam yam chintayate kamam tantam prapnoti nischitam. So when you have a desire for something, a gluttonous propensity for eating. Eating is living is for eating. Suppose if that is your philosophy, then do you know which is the best form that can fulfill your purpose? Oftentimes people say, even the zoologists, they say that the pig is the one which enjoys eating a lot. It seems 24 hours it can keep on munching things apparently. So the gluttonous habit, if it is has high propensity within our own constitution, then the best form I can take in my future birth is of the pig. so that I can get rid of this propensity because I like it. Yam yam chintayate kamam. What is the kama? Food is the only thing I want. I don't want anything else. Keep eating from the morning till evening. Then highly likely that I will be born as a pig. Because in that particular form, we get to enjoy every morsel. This is just a speculation. What I'm trying to say here is what Krishna Bhagavan says here is that's what Krishna Bhagavan wants to say. So once you have a higher ideal, naturally your future incarnations, future births. We talk about future birth and future incarnations because in our Eastern thought we have that Punarjanma is intrinsic in our philosophy. We cannot ignore Punarjanma from any perspective. When you read Shastras, Punarjanma is a very very important concept. It comes as a particular idea which cannot be surpassed. And on the verdict of the scriptures only we get to know about this. So this Punarjanma idea is something which we cannot ignore. Therefore, it says that you take your future forms to fulfill all those propensities. Correct? So that vrijinam, that sin that we commit, which will lead me to future births, I will cross over that sin. See this crossing over the sin becomes a very very simple idea the moment you look at the chakra, avidya kama karma. Now this cycle is a samsara. This cycle is the vrijinam. Now you cross this samsara, you cross this cycle means what? How do you cross a cycle? You have to cut the cycle. So where do you cut the cycle? Avidya you cannot cut while you are engaging in action. Kama you cannot cut, but when you are doing karma, you can have an attitude and then you can cut the cycle. Yajna does that kind of a clinical inspection of your mind and relieves the person from the bondage of accumulating samskaras that leads to the future births, that leads to not only future births, that leads to other degraded forms of action. It's a wonderful idea. So this is the sin we need to redeem ourselves from. Sarvam jnana plavenaiva. Jnana plava is what? Jnana plava is the wave of knowledge. It's a huge wave of what is that knowledge again? The knowledge again is about the Brahmarpanam, Brahma Havihi, Brahma, the equanimity, vision of seeing Brahman everywhere and engaging in that action, identifying with the Brahman and not having the sense of any ownership. Because the world, in a dualistic sense, belongs to the God. The moment we start owning the thing which belongs to another owner, we know that we will be going through a series of sorrow because never ever we will be able to possess that object because it belongs to another person. So, likewise, this entire creation belongs to the God. So, we cannot appropriate that possession and call ourselves as a owner. We have to give up those kind of right to ownership of these objects. We can work with the objects, we can interplay with the objects, we can transact with the objects. So even so with the people, relationship and processes, time, place, all these ephemeral things can be engaged, but only the sense of ownership has to be removed because upfront it doesn't belong to ourselves at all. So this knowledge of equanimity, equal approach to all the objects, all the people, and all the processes. Once we have that, this thought cycle is not going to give any future births and it will not degrade our action. 37 shloka, we have another couple of minutes uh, to 7:30, but even though we started a little late, do we get the liberty to go a little 5 more minutes? Say 7:35, can we? Okay, it looks like yes, Maharaj. Yeah. यथैधांसि समिद्धोग्निर भस्मसात् कुरुते अर्जुन ज्ञानाग्नि सर्वकर्माणि भस्मसात् कुरुते तथा. So sarvam jnana plevane viridinam santarishi, all the ideas that he has put before that a person gets moksha, a person crosses the crosses the what you call the realm of sin. Krishna gives a simile to that. He says, if you put something into the agni, what happens? It burns away, leaving no remains of the original form. Something remains, but that is nothing to do with the original form of the object. So the fire consumes everything. So yata edhamsi, the edha means wood. So samiddaha, iddaha actually means from iddaha comes indhanam, fuel. So iddaha means burning. So edhamsi, the wood, iddaha, samiddaha, completely gets burnt when when it comes in contact with the fire for a sufficient time, with sufficient intensity. Of course, all those things are taken for granted. So fire has the capability of reducing everything down to the form of ashes. Like that, this Jnanagni, the fire of knowledge, has got the same power to bring end to the works. Sarva karmani bhasmasat. It burns all the works. So what does burning all the works means? Burning all the work means it burns all the karma bijas. All the karma bijas are burnt. So they will never sprout into future actions and future births and so on. See, why is the particular idea of karma bija is brought into action, but brought into this interpretation? Because this is something which is within our own control. When we know the philosophy of things, when we know the dynamics of all our actions, then we have a greater control over the actions. Knowledge is power, they say. So the dynamics here is that karma, of course, will lead to bahya phala prapti. You throw the ball goes and hits the stump or something else. That is the bahya lakshana, an outward result. But there is an inward result. The inward result comes because of the desiring, the kama. And that's what is creating the bija. For the future action, you take the ball and throw again. Again, there is a desire. Till the desire is fulfilled, you keep on doing it. So it adds and adds and adds. You do it once, you do it twice, and then it repeats because your desire will never get completely fulfilled. That also we know. One desire leads to another desire. Suppose you are good in aiming a particular object and throwing the ball. Then a desire comes to your mind. Why don't I join a competition and exhibit this particular skill of throwing with a perfect aim? So that gives you that ability, empowers you for entertaining other forms of desire. And now that will give another form of desire. So this is again a cycle. So this is a wonderful recreation of our own uh, what do you call bondages, various kinds of bondages. So he says, so in every thought, every desiring, and every action, the dynamics is involved. When you talk about chemical processes, particularly when you talk about extraction of metals and purification of medicinal chemicals, that purified extract cannot tolerate impurities. They cannot tolerate impurities. Every molecule of the crystal is pure. The moment the diamond has got a dirt within, it's no more a diamond. The diamond is called diamond because it does not have a dirt within. And in the mind, in such the mind also can be converted to that kind of a homogeneous sense, a homogeneous what do you call homogeneous in the sense of uh, engaged with a singular purpose. In that sense, it's homogeneous. It is engaged in a single purpose. Though engaged in various actions, the purpose has got a higher abstraction and a higher and an orientation. So every little indulgence adds up to fulfilling the greater objective. So This Jnanagni puts an end to the karma, meaning to say, it does not permit the deposits of the future seeds of action. Yeah, seeds for the future action. Bhasmasat kurute, it burns the seeds which you have already accumulated. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram vidyate, 38th verse. Tatsvayam yoga samsiddha kalena atmani vindati. So this jnana is again being extolled. There is nothing more purer, should say, than this jnana. Swayameva yoga samsiddha. You see, this is a very important point. In the earlier verse, we say tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashtena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninaha tattvadarshinaha. If you go and meet what you call as a preceptor, now this preceptor can give you knowledge, but can you get it by yourself? He says, Swayameva yoga samsiddha. This particular verse comes and says that you engage in action. There's nothing which stops you from getting engaged with a singular purpose of, it's kind of, training from lower ladders to the higher ladders. Your earlier exercises, success and failure does some kind of a fortification which will leads you to greater doles of success and failures, and then you perfect more and more and your failures keep coming down, and you achieve more and more successes. This is there exhibited in every pursuit of every walk of life. Even very common sense tells us that repeated practice gives us consolidation and gives us the desired fruit. So that's what he says is swayameva, tatswayam yoga samsiddha. So by the repeated practice and being yoked to the very purpose of salvation, emancipation, and getting the right knowledge, supreme knowledge, once he does that, yoga samsiddha, he becomes perfected in yoga. And how does it happen? Kalena atmani vindati. It doesn't happen on a day. Tatvadarshi, yes, you may be very quick to get it, but if not, kalena atmani vindati. You will not be denied, but over the due course of your practice, you are ensured of success. So Krishna puts both the perspectives. Shraddhavan labate jnanam tatparaha sanyatendriya. The 39th verse is a very, very important verse. He says that the swayameva, if you say, if a man can acquire this knowledge by his own efforts, uh, true. But then he says that person shraddha. Shraddha means what? Faith. Faith in whatever objective that he has set forth himself to attain. Even if he has a fiber of doubt, the thread can never be put into the eye of the needle. Every fiber of the thread will have to be aligned in a manner that it grows through the eye of the needle. Even one jutting away is going to obstruct the passage. So, even so is the case of an individual who is engaged in the knowledge acquisition. That every fiber should be aligned. That means every thought should be aligned for knowledge acquisition. So he says, for that one must have tremendous amount of faith. Shraddhavan. Labate jnanam. For him, jnana is ensured. But Shraddha alone is not sufficient. Tatparaha is also required. So tatparaha here means what? The focus. Tadeva parapurushartha. That is the singular thing to be attained. See, I may say that okay, I have a PhD to attain. Fantastic. But in addition to PhD also, I will do some part-time job. That is also there as a part of my daily matter of affairs. So I'll do my PhD also. I'll do my part-time also. So can you think that this PhD will he can put himself 100% in the pursuit of knowledge? His mind is already fragmented. He has apportioned it. So whatever, say 50% he puts his mind, and that 50% result he will get out of the PhD. And the other 50%, of course, whatever job he does, he will get. So the work done for a specific purpose will not get the full return because his mind has got fragmented. So tatparata is required for getting the jnanam. That means all the forces will have to be aligned. Again, the fiber of the thread should not be jutting outside. And third essential quality is Sanyatendriyaha, his indriyas should be controlled. This training of the senses is an idea which we get from Yoga Shastra also. See, we may say that it is the eye which sees the apple. Okay. But it is not the physical eye that sees the actual. There is a nerve center corresponding to the eye which processes the apple. Now the nerve center takes the content of the apple, gives it to the mind. The mind somehow cognizes this apple, and associated with the apple, it gets to know the sense of aroma, sense of attachment, sense of desiring, sense of a lot of trauma, for that matter. Maybe some of his friend might have died eating an apple, that may come to his. And so there are a lot of ideas attached with that object. All those things come forth when he looks at that apple, correct? So now that will compel the senses to act in a particular way, either get attracted to that particular object or get repelled from that particular object. Correct? So this response of the indriya, coming indriya goloka, by the mind, now that needs to be controlled. I cannot allow the apple to dictate the mind. I cannot allow the mangoes to dictate the mind. The mind should be in a position to have a total control on all the objects it gets to experience. And the objects means what? Objects associated with their residual memory. Object by itself is not bad, but the residual memory in my constitution apparently seems to be taking a lot of attention while cognizing the apple. Apple has left the vision, but I'm still living with those memories. And this memory is taking control of the mind. It biases the mind and engages in future action. Now, this particular thing has to be brought under control. So, Indriya Sanyama, Bhagavan Krishna repeatedly says this in the Gita, that Indriya Sanyama is very important. That is, engage in action, but never give yourself never let loose yourself while you are engaging with Indriya. So, Tatparata, total focus, Sanyatendriya, save all the energies which get distracted away through the Indriyas, so control them, and then have faith. This faith is the one which takes this vehicle through the long journey. 100 kilometers you have to ride a horse or a cycle, for that matter. It's not a joke. It requires a lot of energy and a lot of motivation. You have to stay focused. Shraddha takes care. So the motivation for a long journey, the power to gear your vehicle, Sanyatendriya, and Tatparata, not losing the focus. All these three are required for a man to get Nobel Prize, to get the Fields Medal, and to get the Abel's Award, to get the Turing's Award, to become a person like a Magnus Carlsen. I mean, I really admire all these guys because they have demonstrated all these three qualities. They had Shraddha, they had Tatparata, and they had Sayatendriya. But that Tatparata, Tat only mattered a little bit. Tadeva Parapurusha, what is Tat here? For me, in my station of life, I have taken Tat as the supreme reality. But some Carl Wilson or some Subramaniam or Ramakrishnan or Rabindranath Tagore, for them the Tat belong to the world. They have taken that as a complete reality and they focused everything, and then they have met the end of that idea. They have fulfilled a larger purpose. So they have exhibited all these three things, and then they got jnana. They got the highest recognition for the works they have done. It has survived the test of time. That is the quality of jnana. Jnana is permanent. The supreme jnana is permanent, and even the worldly jnana is relatively stands for a long duration of time. So all these great scientific discoveries, and then various kinds of spectacles that happen in this world, all these personalities have exhibited this shraddha, this tatparata, and sanyatendriya. Jnanam ladva param shantim achirena adhigacchati. Once a man gets this kind of supreme knowledge, subsequently shantim adhigacchati. He gets peace. He attains peace. What shanti it is? Param shantim. It is supreme peace. And then the agnyascha, shraddhanascha, samshayatma vinashya. Whenever we say the theorem, then a corollary has to be put. Sometimes the contra come as a corollary. Right? So here the contra is given. Shraddhavan labate jnana. What if you don't have Shraddha? Ashraddhadana. Okay. And then Agyascha. And then Samshayatma. A person is having doubt, a person has no faith, and a person lacks discrimination. Okay. What happens to this person? Vinashyati. He gets destroyed. For him, he does not get the peace in this world, nor peace in the world. Thereafter, he gets into after the passage of life. So I think we come to the last sloka, last but one shloka rather. Yoga sanyasta karmanam jnana sanchinna samshayam atmavantam na karmani nibadhanti dhananjaya. So actions do not bind one who has renounced the actions through yoga. So that yajna, basically yajna, a person who does the work in the sense of a yajna, in him actions will not be binding, and of course, whose doubt is also completely dispelled. Jnana sanchinna samshayam. Samshayam has become sanchinna, has become broken. And then atmavantam, who is focused in his own self, na karmani nibadhanti. The work will never lead to bondage. Tasmat, 42nd verse, which is the last verse, which says, Tasmat ajnana sambhutam kritstam jnana asina atmanaha chitvainam samshayam yogam atishto uttishta bharata. Here again we get a what you call a kind of adrenaline boost. Sri Krishna says, hey, get up, uttishta. Yogam atishta uttishta. That is, get established in the practice of yoga, and with this removing all the doubt about this knowledge. And how you remove? With the sword of knowledge. Jnana asi. Sri Krishna, Sri Ramakrishna also was using this particular concept of Jnana asi, the sword of knowledge. When he was practicing Advaita sadhana, that time Totapuri, his master, found that Sri Ramakrishna, within 3 days this happened. He found Sri Ramakrishna was not able to focus. Yeah, and Sri Ramakrishna said, see, whenever I want to focus in the Nirakara Brahman, I get to see the form of the mother. I'm not able to give my attachment to the divine form of the mother, the Jyoti Swarupa. I'm not able to give up. So how can I rest my mind in the indivisible Sachidananda? I'm not able to do that. Now he says, he pricks the Totapuri, then pricks this the meeting of the bros, Agnya Chakra, and then says, concentrate on the pain. But then he used his own idea. He says that I used the knowledge of the sword of knowledge and cut the form of the mother, and then got relieved myself from the afflictions of the duality and got merged into Nirvikalpa. These are Sri Ramakrishna's own words. Of course, he said in Bengali, mine is a English abstraction. So he said he got merged into the Nirvikara, Nirakara Swarupa, and for 3 long days, he was there in that mood. And Totapuri was really surprised that he found a very befitting disciple in Sri Ramakrishna, that with a mere intimation and an instigation, he was able to establish himself in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. It's okay, but the Jnana Asi, the knowledge is considered as a sword. With that, you cut all the doubts that is there in your mind. The doubts are coming because of Ajnana, because we don't know about our own real self. Shastras keep repeatedly telling that you are the eternal spirit, you are powerful, you are the Sat, you are actually the very form of bliss. Man is undergoing through so much of sorrow, and to tell him that he is the very form of bliss seems to be, belittling his existence. But nevertheless, Shastra doesn't bother about my opinion about it. It comes out with all frankness. It says you are a very format of bliss. So, knowing all these things, we cut our lesser identifications, ajnana, and then he says that you arise from the ignorance. Atishta uttishta. Uttishta here means to rise from that. So this brings us to the end of the 4th chapter, and subsequently we will do the 5th chapter in the next class, sometime I think in the 2nd of November. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. If there are no questions, I will end the stream. Thank you. Wish you all the best.